January 28th, 2025 regular Planning Commission meeting is called to order. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin, commissioners, please put away cell phones. If you have personal business during the meeting, please move for a recess. If you are speaking telephonically, please mute your phone unless you are speaking. Also, when speaking, please state your name for those streaming the meeting. As a reminder to attendees, this meeting is being streamed live. The camera is located in the back of the council chambers above the clock. Will the city planner please call the roll?
Thank you, Commissioner Seals. Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Seals?
Here.
Commissioner Langell?
Here.
Commissioner DeYoung?
Here.
Commissioner Stafford?
Here.
And Commissioner Seals, you do have a quorum with Commissioners Brown, Seals, Langell, DeYoung, and Stafford present in the chambers.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner DeYoung, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item of business is approval of the agenda. Before changes are discussed, are there conflicts of interest to declare? If the commission would like to discuss anything under the consent agenda, such as the minutes, they need to be removed from the consent agenda and placed under new business at this time. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing no changes to the agenda will stand as presented unless objection is raised. Next on the agenda are reports. 5.1 Wasilla Comprehensive Plan Update. LaQuita Chmielowski. Land Use Planning Manager for DOWL. Welcome. Would DOWL like to give their presentation on the Wasilla Comprehensive Plan Update?
Yes, please.
Go ahead. Make sure you state your name for the record.
Yep. Thank you. My name is LaQuita Chmielowski. I am the Land Use Planning Manager at DOWL and the Project Manager for the Comprehensive Plan Update. And I'm here tonight to just kind of give you an introduction to what we're doing, because we're just getting kicked off, and tell you a little bit about the team and our process and how we're going to go forward with your existing comprehensive plan. So hopefully over the next little while, we're going to get to know each other really well, because this won't be the last time that you see me. So a little bit about our team. So DOWL is the lead on this project, and we are not only providing project management, but we will be providing technical expertise when it comes to planning, engineering, and public involvement. DOWL is a firm that was founded in Alaska, and we have offices here and across the Pacific Northwest. And we have numerous technical folks within our firm, including engineers, transportation and land use planners, geotechnical, environmental engineers, survey. So we have a nice bench of people we can tap as we go through the comprehensive plan, because it touches on a lot of different elements. Joining our team is McKinley Research Group, who just recently finished the SEDS for the city of Wasilla, and they will be providing expertise when it comes to finance and economics. And then last but not least is Community Attributes. They are a firm down out of Oregon who we team with regularly on projects like this, and have a good background in growth strategies and land use plan maps. So just some recent projects that we've completed either on our own or with our teaming partners, or they have completed. So we just recently completed the Bethel Comprehensive Plan update along with the Long Range Transportation Plan. City of Soldotna Comprehensive Plan, we were involved in that project. Then I mentioned McKinley Group was involved in the SEDS, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies. We are currently working with community attributes on the City of Washougal Comprehensive Plan and Capital Facilities Plan, and then the City of Yerington Comprehensive Plan. So a little bit about our project approach. You're gonna hear me talk about this a lot, but when it comes to comprehensive plans or plans like this, public involvement is really key. And so as I mentioned, this won't be the last time you see me. We'll be touching base throughout the process because it's really important to get everybody's feedback, because a comprehensive plan is really your plan. It should be everyone's vision for the city of Wasilla and how you want to see that implemented. So we are just here to help facilitate that process as we go through it. The plan, one of the things that we're doing currently is looking at all your current plans and policies, looking for things that need to be thought of as we go forward with the comprehensive plans, things that maybe aren't applicable anymore, just kind of gathering all that existing information. And fortunately, McKinley Group, through their work with the SEDS, has done a lot of this work, so we can hit the ground running. We're not reinventing the wheel. And then along with that, as we gather all that information, we'll start looking at, as we gather that information, we'll start looking at the comprehensive plan that was completed back in 2011. And again, we'll be looking at, of those goals and actions, what has been completed, what's really no longer applicable, what needs to get added, and we'll be looking to all of you in the community for input for that. And then as we go along, we'll be looking at growth strategies and future land use map. So the future land use map, as we generate that, it's really a guiding document for how you want your development and growth to occur. And so it's used for when, like, planning department looks at rezones, they can use the future land use map to see if it's compatible with that, and kind of helps to identify where you want to see your growth opportunities. And then we'll have an implementation and progress metrics. So a plan's great, but if you don't have details on how to get it done, it's not going to go anywhere. So that's what the implementation plan will outline. It will be those specific steps, schedules, resources to get those goals accomplished. So this is just kind of another look of how we're going to do that work in a linear process, although there'll be some overlap. But the main thing I want you to take away from this is that community outreach. So we're really going to be touching the community in many ways over the course of this project. So it may be meetings like this where we're coming and talking to you, to the city council, working with staff. We'll also have open houses. We may have smaller stakeholder groups or technical advisory groups on specific topics, but really making sure that we find a variety of ways to engage the public. So just a little bit more detail on our public participation process. When we start this, one of the first things we do is develop a community engagement plan. And that really is the framework in which we're going to accomplish our community engagement. So it may have details on the number of meetings, types of meetings, stakeholder list. We usually start to identify potential stakeholders to reach out to. But that document ends up being fluid because one of the things that I've found in my experience is as you go along, you have a nice plan in the beginning, but you may find that there's a certain topic or something we didn't think about, and so we need to pivot in how we do our engagement. So although we like to have a plan, so we have a framework in which we're working, we understand it's a little fluid as we go along in the process. We'll use a variety of tools as we go along, not only those open houses and meetings, but we may have pop-ups. We might be sending out surveys. We'd like to use a variety of tools to make sure everybody's getting involved or has an opportunity to be involved. So just, I guess, for those of you that aren't as familiar with comprehensive plans, I'm going to break this down and bear with me if you already know what I'm talking about. One of the things for starting a comprehensive plan is coming up with a vision statement, and you actually in your current comprehensive plan have a vision statement. And then also the plan elements, so the things that are important to the community, and currently your plan is broke up into the elements that are listed there. So transportation, land use, downtown, community assets. So as I mentioned, we'll kind of revisit all of this to make sure that those are still the most important topics and how we want to group them. And within those are different goals and implementation strategies. And so that's going to be one of the things we start with, is just taking a look at that. So this is straight from the comprehensive plan, the vision statement. It's the mission of the city of Wasilla to provide optimum service levels to the public as cost effectively as possible to ensure a stable and thriving economy, promote a healthy community, provide a safe environment and quality of lifestyle, and promote maximum citizen participation in government. So again, this is our starting point. We'll see if this still makes sense or if we should just throw it out completely because Wasilla has a different vision. It's been several years since this plan was done. Or if maybe we can tweak this. But the idea is, as you're creating your goals, you're comparing them to your vision plan to make sure that they're aligned. So it keeps people on the same page as we go along. And then these are just some examples from your comprehensive plan as it exists today. So under each of those elements are goals, and then there are objectives and actions. So for example, under transportation, one of the goals was to provide for streets and highways that provide mobility, connectivity, and access for both present and future users. So this is, kind of a broad brush. This is what we'd like to do. And then there's an objective, which kind of gets a little more detailed, and it's to continue to improve and upgrade city-maintained streets and highways. And the action in which that happens is to update and maintain the city streets and highways plan, set aside funds annually to maintain and improve the existing city roads. So that's just an example of how those goals, objectives, and actions tie together as we go through and develop the plan. And then again, these are just the rest of the elements that are in your current comprehensive plan with the goals. So moving forward, you're gonna receive a survey from us, and it'll be about each of the goals that are in the current plan. And likely it'll be set up on a scale of 1 to 10, so you can tell us if you still think that's important, not important. So we'll be sending that out to all of you here within the next few weeks to start to take that survey. We'll make sure it's not too long and doesn't take too much time. But that'll help us with our evaluation of where the plan sits today. And in the meantime, I would just ask, if you aren't already familiar with your comprehensive plan, your current comprehensive plan, to please take a look at it. What we really want in the end is for you to have a plan that everybody's looking at on a regular basis, because sometimes what we find with these plans is they can become really robust, and so then oftentimes they get put on a shelf and nobody's looking at them. And I will say one of the successes that we had with the Soldotna plan was we really asked folks to narrow in on what were the things that were most important to accomplish within the next 10 years, because these plans are really on a 10-year timeline. They have to be updated every 10 years. And that really helped them to narrow it down and be able to accomplish their goals in a short period of time. And they actually completed all their goals and then some. So we want to take a similar approach here as we go along. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. How important are these plans for securing future funding for infrastructure?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, they're super important. So I'll use City of Bethel as an example. They've been able to use their comprehensive plan and some of the goals that were outlined specifically for transportation to secure funding for those projects so that they can become, for design and construction of those road projects. So they are instrumental in providing the tool to get to the funding.
This is Planner Wellman. This is going to be a little bit for our attorney Eisberg to start with. So when we're working on Title 16, one of the things I've been most excited about is that we're doing the comp plan along with the rewrite of our Title 16 land use code. And we've been saying since the beginning, this is going to be a part of phase 2. And so we've held back quite a few things because it was more applicable. So looking, and this is a real high level question, not like a weeds question, but where does that fit in on the phase 2? Is there a specific point, or is it kind of all over, or not until the end?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the answer is fluid. Like LaQuita said, a lot of the comprehensive plan process is fluid, as is the Title 16 rewrite process. I was thrilled to see on one of your slides mention of municipal code review and recommendations, and I think this is very much going to be a collaborative process as we continue the rewrite. One of the things that we've done so far is we've put Band-Aids on the things that we can. We've streamlined what we can, but there's some portions of the code that can't be addressed until we have guidance from the commission and from council and from the draft comprehensive plan about some of the policy decisions that will need to inform those changes. So I look forward to, and I know Holly does as well, working with DOWL to, and with the commission to iron out some of those policy calls.
Thank you.
Very good presentation, thank you. I just wanted to get a good feel of what you consider the Planning Commission's role throughout this process.
Yeah, so it's, I guess to me, you're a stakeholder because you're part of this community, so providing input along the way. Like I mentioned, right now we're just kind of looking at the existing plans and what should be moved forward, but then eventually we're going to come back to you with a draft plan that has goals and actions and all that, so we want to have feedback from everybody. So I see it as kind of an I guess to answer your question, as an advisory role as we go along.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have Chair Seals, do we have a report from City Planner Wellman this evening?
Yes, thank you very much. So a couple things. If you would like to hear this report again, you can come to the February 10th City Council meeting, and of course you can always come to the meetings, but that presentation will be happening again, and thank you again for coming tonight. It was wonderful. And we have big news for tomorrow. It is Let's Go to School. We're all going to have City Attorney Wells and City Clerk Newman leading us in some training for tomorrow night. We anticipate it'll be about 4 to 5 hours. The meeting starts at 5, but I'll have the doors open for 4:30, and we'll have food, and we'll have food kind of throughout. And Holly had mentioned that, you know, it's kind of if we want to get up and go and grab something, come back and sit down rather than taking it at ease. I mean, we might have to have a couple at eases, of course, but we're really looking forward to that tomorrow night. And then big news, we've hired a planning clerk, and her first day is February 11th. And I'll hold off giving her name because she'll be at the meeting on that night. Our next meeting is February 11th. And so I'm very excited. It was amazing interviews. It was a tough choice, but Julia, oh gosh, you just said her name.
No,
There
just
we go.
part of it. You're
Just
good.
part of it. She just shone, and I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled that she's going to be here, a really good fit. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I can't keep, you got all excited. Yeah, she can't keep secrets. Good.
Do we have a report from Deputy Administrator Nygaard this evening?
Yes, we do, Chair, and I'll just kind of carry on now that we're fully staffed. I've taken a very hard right in economic development because we've got a lot of businesses calling, wanting to know how they can bring their business here and where they can maneuver in the city. So as of today, we got 2,838 businesses. These include temporary licenses for the farm and garden show that's going to happen at the Menard Center, the closure of some seasoned accounts that have been very old, and then the 2025 business license renewal. That does not include online, so your online is about the same amount, actually. We are still doing infrastructure tours on Tuesday each month. We're trying to do the Menard Center and the library one Tuesday, and then the other Tuesdays we do the water, airport, sewer, and then our 2 commercial districts. So if you're interested in going on one of those tours, they're from 3 to 5 on Tuesdays, and let me know. We only take 3 at a time, so that's we've gotten really good input from that, and they really love to show off their facilities, which is great. We are in the process of updating our social media. This has been a very, everybody has a love or hate for social media, so the city has contracted a company to clean up all of our social media and to set some policies and some standards on how each department's going to use it. And then we also have contracted Civics Plus to update our webpage, and that will be complete by July 1st. And so that's very exciting for us to figure out a way to get out our messages. Some new developments. So the Wasilla Airport runway expansion is going to go out to 5,100 feet. The master plan phase 1 is complete. So we are moving on to phase 2, and that's about 50% complete. What that means, I handed out an open house we're having on February 11th. That will allow you and your neighbors to give us feedback on if this is something they're going to support. We're continuing to expand Airport E. We're doing some perimeter fencing improvements because the moose really had a good time with fence this year. Taxiway K, the heliport and lease lot developments, we're working on that. We're doing some planning and environmental that is required for property acquisition. And we have a new DC3 operator coming to the airport this spring that's going to be doing some tourism. So we're very excited about that. We also have our new construction, and really planning is kind of the pulse of how many permits are coming in. We are off to a great start this year. The phone is ringing. The computer is lighting up with permits. We have a very large hotel development that will be submitting their plans 1st of March. That will be 2 new hotels. We have a clinic expansion. We have some large retailers, I say large at 30,000 square feet, that are looking to get some permitting. We've got some pretty robust subdivision developers that we are training. We're putting them through boot camp on how to do business in Wasilla. And so we also have multiple permits for residential duplexes and multiplexes. So I'm going to work with planning to do a short little Polaroid snapshot so you guys have that handy when people ask you what's the economy look like in Wasilla. I was excited. We went to the Anchorage Economic Development Luncheon. Much better mood than last year. But their goal was to do 1,000 new homes a year. And as of 2 weeks ago, the borough reported they did 838 last year. So we're already almost to where Anchorage would like to be. So this is awesome. Couple other things to keep in mind. We did get a $3 million appropriation for the airport expansion from Murkowski. As you know, that was not signed by Biden when he left, and it is open for either it's going to stay in or get cut by the 1st of March. And so we're monitoring that closely. We also got a $1.9 million appropriation from Murkowski for the Wasilla Palmer Interconnect. That's the interconnection between our 2 water systems. And we got $2 million from Senator Wilson and Representative Tilton for that project. That project is currently in a design phase at about 65%. So we're moving along quickly there. The donut hole, if anybody asks you about the donut hole at the airport, that's a 90-degree turn on Clapp Road that does not have power. We submitted a grant to FEMA about 2.5 years ago for $750,000. We've not been told no, but they've not said yes. But that looks like a very fundable project, maybe in June of this spring. And the last thing, let's see, Valley Board of Realtors have invited us to come speak to them the 12th of February, give them an update on our land use, public works, and economic development. So we'll be the guest speaker there. Our REPLs, those are the restaurant eating, basically beer and wine license. The last time we checked, 6 of the 20 actually were used. We have had a couple communities call us about how did you do that? How did you get those? We need some, but I think there was a pretty hard deadline, so I'm glad we got 20 of those when we did. And we are excited for Title 316 to get done. So that's kind of a little update. If you want any more information, you can go to our website under Economic Development and get some of this information.
I just wanted to take a second because I know you'll be leaving here in a minute and just really thank you, Deputy Administrator Nygaard. And I say this with all my heart, you've really put in a lot and really made some, I'm gonna get a little teary-eyed, made some sacrifices with your time, with everything that's been going on. And you really carried us through and I appreciate it. And I appreciate everything you've taught me and given some wings. Thank you. And we're really going to see the fruits of all your labor. And now we'll see you in a different capacity now, too. So thank you.
More sales tax.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Administrator Nygaard. Do we have a report from the City Attorney Zoe Eisberg tonight?
Thank you. Like Deputy Administrator Nygaard said, we're happy to be approaching the end of the Title 16 Phase 1 process. I'm hoping to work through the rest of Divisions 4, 5, and 6 with the Commission tonight. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. On a personal note, this is going to be my last meeting with the Commission. I'm moving on to another firm at the end of this month. It has been such a pleasure working with everybody. Holly and I are fully in sync, and I know you guys are in great hands.
I'd like to give her the card if that's okay.
And thank you for the lovely flowers. I assume these are for me.
Yes. And then we have this,
Wait for it.
So you like us so much you leaving?
Yeah.
a few of us
No, you go, girl.
wrote a few things.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everybody very much.
We are now at public participation, and there are not any items scheduled for public hearing, so we're going to move on directly to persons to be heard. Doesn't look like we have anyone. With no one wishing to speak, the next item of business is the consent agenda. Would the city planner please read the items for approval under the consent agenda into the record?
Thank you, Commissioner Seals. Under the consent agenda tonight, we have the minutes of the preceding meetings, regular meeting minutes, January 14th, 2025.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Commissioner Stafford, I move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Langill, second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Stafford and seconded by Commissioner Langill to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, are there any objections to the motion? There we go. Hearing none, the motion is approved. Next item on the agenda is new business. With no items under new business, we are moving to unfinished business. We are now at unfinished business. Will the city planner please read the item under unfinished business into the record, please?
Thank you, Commissioner Seals. We have unfinished business, discussion, consideration, and possible action on the draft rewrite of Wasilla Municipal Code Title 16 Land Development Code that repeals and reenacts Title 16 to substantially change the uses permitted in each zoning district, the review, enforcement, and permitting procedures, the planned unit development, landscaping, parking, conditional use, and variance procedures, and the design standards imposed in the city. And this will be committee of the whole. And clerk's note, discussion on the draft rewrite is expected to be continued at upcoming planning commission meetings Please contact the planning office after January 28th, 2025 for updated information. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to enter into committee of the whole to discuss agenda item 9.1, the draft rewrite of Title 16 of the Land Development Code?
Commissioner Stafford, I move into committee of the whole to discuss Title 16 Development Code.
Commissioner Brown, second.
Is there any discussion? Any objections? The motion passes unanimously to enter into the committee of the whole. The time is 6:30 p.m. Would the city attorney please provide an update on the Title 16 rewrite?
Sure. So we've got a lot of ground to cover this evening. I'm hoping to work through the rest of Division 4, which includes non-conforming lots, buildings, and uses, and then Divisions 5 and 6, which are a little bit drier, and talk about permits and reviews and administrative processes. I know you guys like to wrap up by 8, so no promises, but I'll do my best. So first I'll start with Chapter 1685 of the proposed Title 16, which addresses non-conforming lots, buildings, and uses. A lot of this is going to be policy-driven, so we've left some of the big, broad sweeping changes for Phase 2 after the comprehensive plan is developed. The way the code is drafted right now, there's kind of a laundry list of circumstances where a building does and doesn't need to comply with provisions of city land use code that were enacted after the building is constructed. We've cleaned those up a little bit, but the chapter is going to require further review after the comprehensive plan to determine where council and the commission want to go next. As currently drafted, this chapter includes bonds, subdivision programs, provisions regarding public improvements, and variance provisions in the chapter addressing non-conforming uses. That's confusing, so we've cleaned it up a little bit. Variances are addressed in a provision talking about variances. They're not lumped in with non-conforming uses. We've also heard consistent feedback throughout this process that bond requirements are burdensome, difficult to implement, and don't often serve compelling purposes. So we've removed bond provisions except for unrelated guarantees for public utility provisions, which are addressed in the subdivision section of City Code.
This is Chair Seals.
Sure.
As we move through this, can we refer to page numbers?
Sure.
Just so we're all on the same page.
So I can be in charge of the like the actual agenda. Let me just grab where we are. One moment.
In the packet that we got, it's page 540.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. 540?
Yeah.
Yes,
And so,
And Mr. Chairman, every once in a while, I do need to stand up and stretch from my surgery. I won't be leaving the room, but I need to stand.
That's fine.
okay.
So I think, Chair Seals, as I understood your question, you're looking for the specific citations in the proposed city code that we're talking about? Or-
Well, last time we were going through this, and there was some confusion on page number in the
Okay.
handout and the booklet we have. So I just wanted to mention it early on
Okay.
so that if we get confused which number or page we're on,
Sure.
we all know what we're doing here.
Okay, so Planner Wellman, can you and I work together to?
Yes,
Okay.
and then Commissioner Brown was in charge of being, if he would be so kind to do again, he has our little binder page. So some of us are following along in the binder and some of
are
us
in the
have
packet.
in the packet. So I'll be packet and, yeah.
Okay, terrific.
Page 113 or 150.
So I really appreciated Planner Wellman's question earlier about the interplay with the comprehensive plan, because I do think it's important to understand the way that the comprehensive plan works in tandem with city code. So the city's land use regulations are governed by three sources of law: the Land Development Code, the Comprehensive Plan, and then Planning Authority, designated by the borough and by the Alaska legislature. So those are kind of our three sources of law. And LaQuita walked through very nicely earlier with her beautiful graphics the current goals of the comprehensive plan. Right now, they're to provide balanced land use patterns, to encourage development, to encourage residential housing opportunities, to promote positive neighborhood identities, and to build a strong civic base, and also to continue to expand the city's borders as needed to allow economic development and growth in the future. It may be that as the public participation in the comprehensive plan plays out, that other objectives and goals are identified which make more sense with where the city is now and where it wants to go in the future. But we just don't know what those are right now. And while we can attempt to guess, it might be more precise and will be more precise to wait until that comprehensive plan process is underway. Okay, so just to summarize where we've been this meeting and the last meeting in Division 4. Division 4 is our most substantive division. It attempts to clearly identify specific uses and land use criteria within the city. And it's appropriate for us to evaluate the breadth of those criteria and to make sure that they're all clear and easy to apply during phase 1. But to the extent that there's additional policy considerations or more sweeping changes, those are something that we'll address during phase 2 with the benefit of the comprehensive plan process. Do any members of the commission have any questions or any input about this portion of the proposed Title 16 rewrite before we move on to Division 5?
Okay, so, one moment.
I hit the button and it went black. I wasn't sure if I did that.
Oh.
Just a question now. Earlier it was stated that with the rewrite of 16 in the comp plan, at what point will they be merged, or will you continue with the rewrite, and if something comes up in the comp plan, then just change that portion?
So all of the changes that we're proposing right now could, once we've wrapped up this review process, if council sees it appropriate, could then be finalized in an updated version of Title 16. Nothing that we've suggested, I think, intrudes on that phase 2 process. Once these changes, if they are implemented, then the council and the commission, in collaboration with DOWL, could evaluate whether additional changes would make sense, but we wouldn't need to put these changes on hold in order to move forward.
Okay, so the changes like 260, chapter 260 that was passed by the council, that won't be up for changes as we work through this, will it? All of the changes that's been passed by the council will stay that way?
Unless the council decides that it wants to implement additional changes through the ordinance process.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll go ahead and identify that we are on agenda packet page 543.
115 or 150?
Thank you.
Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, Division 5 addresses permits and review processes. This division includes all permitting requirements, including administrative permits, conditional use permits, planned unit development, subdivision provisions, and the variance process. And what we've done here is we've tried to substantially streamline the city's permitting process. Right now, there's a 3-tiered permitting process, which differs from what you see in most municipalities and from what most developers are used to. And we've turned that into a 2-tiered administrative permit and conditional use permit process. We've also clarified that there are some things that property owners can do on their own property which don't require a permit at all. Some uses or land use changes are just outright allowed. That's not something that's reflected in current municipal code, and I think will make the code a lot more intuitive and approachable and less punitive for landowners.
May I interject really quickly here?
Sure.
This might be a really good time. So one of the things process-wise, and I won't go into a ton of details, but process-wise, a lot of times where we have a big volume of participation that we have to do in the planning department is when somebody comes in to get a business license. Because when they come in to get a business license, they must contact planning to see if there's any land use codes that maybe they might need a permit for. And usually those are already addressed, but maybe they've moved, or maybe it's a different use, or maybe they're brand new. So what we're working on at that end is maybe on the front end of taking care of these things. Because what happens now is every single one of those people, if they haven't had it addressed yet, then I have to talk to them. And I have to find out, what do you do? What, maybe you're a daycare, or maybe you're a groomer. Well, how many groomers are you going to have in the building? So we're going to be working on it on the front end versus the volume that will be coming into the office that is taking a lot of time, so that it will be more, oh, I don't have to talk to the planning department and it'll just move right along. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that context. One of the primary considerations that we tried to take into account in crafting Division 5 was making sure that we were, wherever possible, reducing that administrative burden and the staff time needed to facilitate what should be routine planning tasks.
And it's actually been a really great exercise for us because we just awarded to Tyler. Tyler is the name of our new ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning Program. It's our new software system for the city. And it's going to be financial, permitting, everything, a few outliers, but for the most part, we'll be moving into this, actually millennium. We're very excited, but it's given us a chance to start looking at those processes and seeing how they will fit and making those changes now, because I think the code might get here before they actually roll out the new software. Thanks.
So Division 6 is similar to Division 5 in that it addresses administrative procedures and processes, but it specifically pertains to appeals procedures before the commission and before administrative hearing officers. What this does is it includes a single location for not only those processes, but also for enforcement procedures, fines, and provisions governing land use code violations. Some of the feedback that we heard during this process was that these things were all located in different areas of the code, and so it was challenging to reconcile not only what would happen if there was a land use code violation, but also what process and what appeal rights were available. And a lot of the content in this section is governed by not only state law pertaining to the way administrative entities work, but also by principles of due process. And while those protections were already inherent in city code, what this rewrite does is just make it a little bit clearer that the code does in fact comply with these well-established principles of state law and case law.
I have one other quick thing on that. So this is a rather 11th hour, and I haven't really had a chance to talk too much about this with you. Maureen is in our business licensing tax auditor. Her, along with Charlie, our code compliance officer, we work very closely, the three of us. And we realized pretty quickly that there's some discrepancies on what maybe code compliance calls his book of violations versus what the planner is going to initiate for him to go out. And so we're going to propose maybe a little smidgen of a change on some of this, just to make it so that we're all using the same language, and nothing really big contextually, just our context. Am I saying that right? Anyway, nothing big in that manner, but just a little cleanup.
Yeah, that sounds terrific. I mean, we absolutely want to make sure that we have a work product that's feasible for code compliance to implement and that everybody's speaking the same language throughout that process.
And your side was great. Everything is great on that side. We were just making sure on the code compliance, his things that we're saying. So
Sure.
thank you.
Yeah.
And we're on page 545.
So we've organized Division 5 to try to ensure that when developers and landowners are trying to figure out what they have to do to get consent for the use of their property, they're going to one place in city code. We don't want the planning department to have to constantly field questions like, do I need a permit for this? How can I get permission to do this? When those questions can be located by the developer themselves in city code. So there's 5 chapters in the division, each of which we think does exactly what it says. You know, you can go to the permits and site plans chapter if you have a question about permits and site plans. You can go to the variance chapter if you have a question about variances. You can go to the subdivision chapter if you have a question about subdivisions. And each of those chapters includes specific guidance about permitting procedures. So we've tried to create clear permitting processes which developers and owners can count on. We don't want there to be any surprises. And like I said earlier, if there's a use that's outright permitted in a district and a person is complying with city code, then a permit will automatically be approved. The planner is simply there in this process to confirm that code requirements are met, but the planner doesn't apply a laundry list of criteria for permitted uses. That introduces an element of subjectivity and fluidity, which we don't think is appropriate in the permitted use context. We've also broadened the criteria for conditional use permits to allow the commission to consider all of the impacts of a use and to adopt conditions that are necessary to ensure that those criteria are met. It maintains the commission's discretion when approving conditional uses. We've previously heard from the commission that it feels like it's hamstrung to walk through a rather rigid list of criteria in the conditional use permit approval process. So we've broadened the things that the commission can consider in its review here to allow it to better exercise its expertise. We've also clarified the variance process. Variances are something which are closely regulated by state law. And the current version of Title 16 deviates a little bit from what we're used to seeing. So we've tightened that up. We've clarified that variances are subject to the conditional use permit application process, but only after specific requirements which are mandated by statute and by Alaska law are considered by the commission. So we've clarified not only the substantive criteria that apply to variances, but also the process that developers can expect. So here is that list that I was talking about things you can do to your property that don't require an administrative permit.
And this is 546.
Yes. And the print is a little small, but I think that's good because it means that there's a lot of things you can do to your property without going to the city for a land use permit. You can make changes to existing buildings or structures which don't increase the height or exterior dimension of any floor of the building. You can erect a communication tower with a height not exceeding 35 feet or an amateur radio tower. You can put up a fence unless otherwise specified by city code. You can add farm animals or beehives, which are permitted under and in compliance with Title 16. You can replace dead, damaged, or stolen landscaping without coming to the city for approval. You can repair your roof or deck, or replace your roof or deck. I think these are changes that are going to induce a really positive reaction from the city. I think they make good sense with most landowners' reasonable expectations for what they can do to their own property. Some of the feedback that we've heard from folks is that they don't move to Wasilla for more restrictions on what they can do to their property, but rather less. And sometimes we've had landowners be surprised when they look at code as currently drafted and feel like it's more burdensome than they had anticipated. When administrative permits are required, we've tried to make obtaining those permits easier for landowners. So administrative permits must contain a description of the use on the property, a statement confirming that the development and use of the property complies with and will continue to comply with applicable federal, state, and local laws, a copy of the wastewater contribution permit or application for the wastewater contribution permit, and then copies of any required surveys, landscaping, or site plans for the property. And once the completed application has been submitted to the planner must then decide whether it's in compliance with Title 16 and may issue the administrative permit no later than 30 business days after receiving a complete application. That's it. That's a pretty straightforward, common sense process. And one of the things that we've done here is current city code imposes a pretty quick deadline on the city planner to review and issue permits after a complete permit is received. While of course the planning department wants to issue permits as quickly as it can, that's not always possible to do under a very tight turnaround time, which can create frustration for applicants. So we've extended the permit issuance date to 30 days, which is still a reasonable turnaround time, but allows the planner more flexibility to accommodate what may be at some parts in the portions of the year pretty high volume of requests from landowners.
I have one comment.
Sure.
I'd like to check on number 3, so this would be on page 548 of the agenda. The copy of the wastewater contribution permit. I'm not familiar with that specifically, and I will get with the Public Works, but I have not seen that document, and that may be more of like a general concept.
Yeah, my understanding is that this pertains to a need for some properties to be tied into public utilities or to have
Yes.
a plan for addressing wastewater.
And that's what I took it as, more of like an overview versus, yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Brown's question. So what happens if the planner does not meet the 30-day turnaround time?
Yeah, so if there's a deadline imposed by city code for specific action on the part of the city, if that deadline isn't met for whatever reason and it should have been met, then the applicant would be able to take some next step. That could take the form of, an action in court, trying to compel the city to take that action. But I mean, ultimately, the city wants to work with people to issue permits when it can. And so I would expect that most permits would be possible to issue within that 30-day time frame, unless there's just been some kind of administrative oversight. If an incomplete permit application is received, the city planner is under no obligation to issue a permit and would work with the applicant to make sure that they receive a complete product before making a decision.
And I can say now with some of the changes that will be handled administratively, that's very much more doable because many more of them will actually be coming to you, and which is a good thing. The internal one, and yes, we can do it well. It's been pretty crazy, but yes.
And the reason I asked the question, that was where I was going. If the planner doesn't meet, does it automatically elevates to the planning commission?
That's not a mechanism that we've built into city code right now, but that can be something that we discuss. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any other city codes that have an automatic elevation provision like that.
I've seen other codes do that, and the reason is, for whatever reason, she doesn't complete it if it's negligent. The cities could be financially responsible to the permittee at that point, but if it was an automatic clause that if she didn't meet it, it elevated to the planning commission, the clock almost starts over again.
Well,
Yeah.
that was my question, Commissioner DeYoung, was who pays for it? Because, I mean, and then 2, the 30 days, I mean, we live in Alaska, so if you're trying to get a permit in August or whatever, we have a very short building time. So how do we address that? Because some people can't build in the winter. And so then they're put off another 6 months until, yay, it's April again. And so I'm just curious why they picked the 30-day. That seems like a long time to me. It does, because I'm in real estate and I represent builders also, and that's a really long time, you guys, to be waiting around for something to happen, especially if, I mean, you would almost have to start in January or sooner, or it's a year out.
They
which
are starting.
a lot of people, well, if you're building homes for people, you don't want to wait a year. I mean, I mean, I'm just curious.
Commissioner Stafford, we've discussed this before a year or so ago as we were looking at shortening the times in. And if I remember right, at the time, the city planner explained that there's a pre-permit process worksheet that if the builder will follow that process, they show up with everything done well enough that it should be ready to go. It's gonna be the builders that came in unprepared, unplanned, that don't have their act together, that this 30 days is gonna take to go through it because they didn't do their work on their end. And they're just dumping a bunch of stuff on the city planner's desk saying, hey, say this is okay.
Got it.
And so the 30 days is only, if I remember from the discussion last time, and correct me, Planner Wellman, was basically would only happen if the builder didn't have his act together to begin with.
And then it probably takes longer than 30 days. I believe
Right.
me, I know builders that don't have their act together. So.
And I am looking on page 117 in the binder, and it does say that if the planner needs more than 30 days, that extension of time must be approved by the commission. So it does say that in there, that if you're not gonna get it done in the 30 days, you have to ask us if it's okay to extend it. So there is kind of a check valve there a little bit.
Well, the operative word being they have to have a complete application. I mean, that saves a lot of aggravation on planner's part, because if you don't have a complete application, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
I can give you a couple of examples. So the pre-application has been such a great fit. So we bring the three reviewers, which are Maureen, is one I was talking about before, and then also sometimes Robert, who's our Deputy Public Works Director, or Eric. We come into the pre-application meeting. Sometimes more people, if it's a bigger project, we'll get the whole team in. But for, let's say, like a single family dwelling, first time builder, we bring them in. Maybe they've never built in the city before and they don't even have a business license. Well, imagine if you go to turn in that permit, Maureen is looking at the review and saying, well, you don't have a business license in the city. Well, it automatically halts it. So it's not complete, but then I'd be frustrated too. But it allows us, I think previously one of the things I mentioned was I would rather have a good forward-facing front and say, hi, welcome to the city. Did you know that as a builder, there are some, if you're the one who owns the land, you get some tax benefits, credits that you can get with the city. And Maureen is able to sit and explain those. Plus it provides a sense of assurance for maybe the homeowner who's having their house built that Maureen has gone and checked to make sure that they're registered with the state. And then on my end, I'm making sure that, all the land use is correct, that, maybe the zone is correct. And then Robert is looking at, setbacks for me too. But Robert's looking at setbacks, making sure that the septic's on the correct side. Maybe it's not over by the well on the neighbors, or, whatever it happens to be. That's the first time. And then we're hoping once they're, ready to go, that the next time they have everything and we won't have to bring them back.
They have their act together.
Yeah, but if they'd like, we're always happy to. Where it gets a little, sometimes we have them, but sometimes we don't, are like maybe a restaurant. Yes, for sure, we're going to have a restaurant. But some of these smaller ones, no, not necessarily. They'll turn them in and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Commissioner Brown, the reason I brought the question up, I keep hearing 30 days is a long time. It's not. And if you go to other cities, you'll find out it takes longer than 30 days. So, and right now we're fairly small, and you probably can get through it fairly quickly. But what I keep hearing is Wasilla want more and more people and more businesses. As that happens, the workload also increases. And I'm just concerned that we don't tie ourselves into a box that we have a hard time fulfilling later on. But if you think 30 days will work for the next 10 years, then I will back down.
It's a little tough to quantify right now because it is so busy, but it's me. And so, but I've had some great help along the way. I don't want to say I'm just doing everything, but so having the second person in there is really going to be beneficial. But that you're absolutely correct. We've had some that are in there that I'm poking back out and saying, oh, we still need this from you. Meanwhile, every time that I take to go and ask that person that didn't do the site plan, well, then I'm not able to work on the permit of somebody who does have 100% complete, which your builder who wants to move forward is like, what is going on? So I tend to agree that, yes, especially with the way things are
Thank you.
going.
And I really appreciate Commissioner Stafford highlighting that portion of city code. If the planner does need additional time, she can come to the commission and ask for it. It's not a process that's without oversight or puts applications in a big black box never to be seen again. There is an element of public process and of collaboration between the developer and the planning department and the planning department and the commission.
It also provides, I think, it does make the applicant feel good too, because I could, be a rogue. I could go rogue and, maybe stuff a permit in a drawer. I mean, and seriously, it provides some safety for them.
That's what worries me.
Yeah.
Well, she can say, I don't like
Permits
you, I
in
don't
a
like your
drawer.
attitude, you're on the bottom of the list.
I have a feeling that has happened in the past.
Oh, I think it has, I'm sure of it.
Page number, let's see.
549 in the tonight's packet.
549.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt. So looking at our binder on page 116 and 150, so we have 16.90.010 administrative permit, and then the next one is the same number, 16.90.010 temporary use permit.
Yeah,
So-
that numbering should be corrected.
Okay, yeah, I just wanna make sure I was looking at it right. Yeah, it looks like the numbering just got off.
Okay. And of course, before the ordinance is finalized, we'll go through and do a close
Ye-
line-by-line
yeah.
review. Yeah. So site plans and subdivisions, these have been the subject of a lot of grief for the planning department. Some of the feedback that we've gotten has been that the site plan requirement is burdensome, difficult to interpret, and really negatively impacts an owner or developer's ability and willingness to engage with the city. We've tried to reframe the site plan requirement and reduce it rather than a barrier for developers to something that allows the planning department and the commission to easily review a proposed development, see what's going on, see whether it complies with Title 16, and then move on. It shouldn't be a hurdle the developer is hard pressed to pass in order to get a permit. So the subdivision chapter largely is consistent with Title 16 as currently drafted. This has also been the subject of some confusion. There's redundancy between borough code and city code pertaining to the subdivision process, and so we've been working with the borough to better understand the city's role in that process to make sure, one, that there's no duplication of tasks between the city and the borough, but also that the city is able to provide input in the borough's subdivision process as appropriate. That's a collaborative process, it's ongoing, and once we get clear guidance about where the borough's subdivision authority stops and the city's starts, we'll be able to recommend some more concrete changes.
Pardon me, do you have any idea how long that process is going to take? Because it is causing confusion, not only for some of us planners, but developers.
I'm not able to provide a concrete deadline. I know that we've been actively working with the borough's attorney to better understand that. I wish I was able to say, 2 weeks, a month, something like that, but I don't have a deadline to give you right now.
But it has been initiated.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I do have another question.
Sure.
Again, I keep coming back to these subdivisions and the city's current participation in a developer proceeding with a subdivision plan. Are developers required right now to come to the city first before going to the borough with a subdivision plan?
No.
Yeah, the answer to that question is, looking at borough code does not currently require a developer to first go to the city before coming to the borough.
Correct.
So oftentimes what'll happen is, you'll get a borough level subdivision plan that's approved with no input from the city.
Commissioner Langell, 100% agree. I can't say this even stronger enough. We had some institutional knowledge that left with the people who were here before. And I don't know what they felt about this process, if they agreed with the process. We're learning what the process is. I'm interested to find out how we can, well, we're gonna find out what it is, but how we can make it better, and how we can, if we're, I don't know that we have a say right now. I've just seen kind of the tail end of things where we're building out, and I wondered, wait a minute, how did this happen? How did the plans, because we're just looking at, if a developer was to come in, we're just looking at, here's the line. We're not looking at, here's all the things we want to do within here. So then they go to the borough at that point, and that's where I'm lost. That's where I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, the borough, that's.
When because then it comes back here, and we did have a meeting, there was Holly and Crystal and Eric and myself went over, so it with the borough, and this is going to be exciting to move forward, and the borough's been so wonderful to work with, and I feel that it's just going to be collaborative. The developers have been good, no issues. I just think once everybody knows how the process will work, we'll all be happier.
True, but at this point, a developer is not required to come to the city for pre-approval or comment on doing a subdivision within this borough.
And the development, or the just subdividing a lot
When you do a
into.
subdivision, it
Right, there is a
development.
preliminary plat that they will bring in, and that does come through. We have to give a subdivision permit.
But they've started at the
No,
borough.
they may conjunction, but the borough will not go forward without that subdivision approval from the city of Wasilla. Or subdivision preliminary plat.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
So I want to briefly walk through conditional use criteria. We've updated these a little bit to more closely mirror what developers are used to seeing from a conditional use permit.
This is page 550 of the packet.
So what we've done is we've broken down city codes so that each proposed use and structure is specifically addressed by the conditional use permit process in each specific zoning district. Right now, it's all kind of lumped together in city code and difficult to navigate. We've also clarified that proposed uses and structures should be compatible with the purpose of the zoning district in which the lot is located. Another one of the criteria is that the value of the adjoining property will not be negatively affected, greater than the anticipated, greater than the negative impact which is anticipated from other permitted or conditionally permitted uses in the district. So what that means is that in reviewing a conditional use permit, it's important to determine whether a proposed use will negatively impact an adjacent lot more than they'd expect from similar uses. So there's not going to be some outlandish use that nobody could have expected in a specific district. Another criteria is that the proposal is compatible with existing uses of surrounding land. Again, we don't want to surprise anybody. That public services and facilities will be able to adequately serve the proposed use and structure, so that the proposed use isn't overburdening public utilities or infrastructure, and that it won't be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the corresponding area, that the proposal complies with applicable regulations, and that the proposal is not contrary to land use goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. So essentially, all of these criteria are aimed at ensuring that there's no surprises in land use development and that the proposal complies with applicable law.
Okay, just for clarification,
Sure.
because I was disruptive at the planning level because of looking at code versus comp plan. Correct me if I'm wrong. Code is the regulation we use as a planning commissioner to determine if a permit follows code. The comprehensive plan is a goal or objectives. It is not code, and it cannot replace code.
That's correct. But what these conditional use criteria do is allow the commission and the planning department discretion to consider those goals and policy objectives that are articulated in the comprehensive plan. So the commission might review a proposal and review the comprehensive plan and say, I don't know whether this proposed use is going to facilitate the goal that the comprehensive plan has set for this zoning district. Or, I think that this zoning district is better suited to a different type of use. That's something that the commission can consider. It can also consider whether, even if a proposed use isn't consistent with the comprehensive plan, whether all of the remaining criteria are satisfied, and so it'll approve the permit anyway.
Right, and the goal at this point is to have the comp plan updated so that it joins with the code, so it's clear that both rely on each other.
Exactly.
Instead of 10, 11 years down the road.
And that the comprehensive plan is consistent with public input and the types of policies and goals that we'd like to see furthered in the city. We want to make sure that that all the decision makers are working with an updated product.
So this is Planner Wellman. One of the things that I think is going to be so useful is the review of the comprehensive plan as part of the duties of the commission more frequently, so that we're not left with a product that is that old.
So Commissioner Lenko, like you were saying, the approval criteria for conditional use permits give the owner and the commission an opportunity to consider a variety of factors. No one factor is individually determinative of whether a permit should be approved, but they allow all stakeholders an ability to kind of see what will be considered and what matters in terms of their application. Another update that we've made to the conditional use permit application process is clarifying that the commission as a body is obligated to act on a complete conditional use permit within 60 days, or if the commission doesn't act, then the application is automatically considered approved. So that's a procedural safeguard that we've built in, which incentivizes the planning department to timely review applications to make sure they're complete, and then the commission to timely consider and act on applications. It also allows the commission a little bit of flexibility in that if it isn't able to act on a permit application that's complete, It doesn't have to, but the consequence of that inaction will be that the permit is automatically approved. So that's just something to keep in mind. And this type of provision provides greater certainty to landowners and developers. They can rest assured knowing that if they act swiftly and act appropriately with the planning department to submit a complete conditional use permit application, they've got a date certain when they're gonna know one way or the other. They're not gonna be left hanging for forever. Do any members of the commission have any questions about these permitting procedures before we move on to Division 6? Okay, guess we'll keep on going.
So we're on page.
This is Chair Seals. I
552.
do have one
Sure.
thing to add, though. You have to look at this as, we're just a flash in time. There's going to be other administrations in this city. There's gonna be other planning commissions. 10 years from now, there may be a totally different comprehensive plan. So what we're working to do is to get something workable for the community, that's simple and easy, and not binding the future.
Yep. Yeah, what we've tried to do here is to provide a skeletal procedure that's going to be easy for different administrations to implement, while also allowing the flexibility to consider those changing goals and policy objectives.
Thank you.
I have one quick question jumping back, and it goes back to the timeline for the 60 days. Does that bind the commission's hands at all? Is there any way that, if necessary, that it could be longer than 60 days? And was that for approval or disapproval, or just the whole process?
That's for action on a specific complete permit application.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. So city code does require the commission to meet periodically. While there could be an act of God that prevents that from happening, the consequence would be that after that 60 days, the permit would be taken as approved. So that's the mechanism that we've drafted. So Division 6 addresses administration and administrative procedures. It specifically addresses appeals to the Planning Commission, appeals to an administrative hearing officer, and then administration and enforcement of city code. Some of what this division does is it attempts to give permit holders the benefit of the doubt. Some of the feedback that we got from members of the public and from the commission and from council was that permit holders felt like they were subject to an unfair process when they elected to file an appeal, or when another stakeholder elected to appeal a decision. So what some of the changes that we've suggested do is stay a permit or decision until a decision maker finally decides an appeal. But a decision maker is also allowed the ability to vacate the stay if doing so is necessary to avoid immediate danger to public health or safety. Some of the areas that we've seen this come up are, for example, appeals from short-term rental permit approvals. Adjoining landowners might feel like a permit was improperly approved or improperly denied and might appeal that decision. This allows for the permit or decision to either be stayed or paused while that proceeding is pending, or for the decision maker to vacate the stay to avoid hardship to interested parties. And an underlying action is not stayed just because an appeal is filed, but the administrative hearing officer may order a stay if doing so is necessary to avoid immediate danger to public health, safety, or welfare. And these changes give permit holders the benefit of the doubt and also allow decision makers discretion. So there's some risk in taking action before an appeal is finally decided, but the permit holder is able to weigh the risk in doing that and make a decision about how they want to proceed regarding their use. So here's a little bit of a breakdown about the difference between commission and hearing officer hearings. So the chart's a little bit backwards in that it addresses hearing officer hearings, which are a higher level of process on the left, and then planning commission appeals on the right. So after a decision, after a land use decision by the planning department, there's 15 days to appeal to the planning commission. There's a $500 filing fee. You have to file a notice of appeal. You have to give notice to neighboring property owners. The commission has to set a hearing on an appeal within a specific period of time and follow rigid notice requirements. And then there's also a short amount of public process that's allowed. So you've only got 5 minutes to present argument and 5 minutes for rebuttal. The next highest level of appeal is an appeal from a commission decision to a hearing officer. So you've got 15 days to do that. Notice is given to interested parties and posted on city websites. And procedurally, an appeal to a hearing officer looks a little bit more like a mini trial. You can submit written arguments and present oral arguments. There's a little bit of a longer hearing, and then there's a written decision that's issued within 45 days and posted on the city website. Now, final decisions of a hearing officer are appealable to court, so there's even a further level of process that's allowed. But at that point, it's out of the city's hands unless the city elects to participate as a party. The ordinary court rules would apply to those cases.
Commissioner Brown, redo that last there. So the city appoints a hearing officer. He finds in favor of the city. As the citizen have a right to go to Superior Court at that point.
Yes, exactly.
Who's in court representing the city?
At that point, it would be the city attorney.
Okay.
Yep. The hearing officer is a third-party
Right,
neutral
right.
that's appointed.
So he's
Yep.
he's out of the equation at that
Yes.
point.
Yep.
Okay.
It would not be, you know, I know some folks are familiar with code violation proceedings where a code enforcement officer can represent the city in court in limited circumstances. That's not the case here. It would be the city attorney. So speaking of code enforcement, Chapter 16-125 of the proposed Title 16 pertains specifically to code enforcement. It includes very specific enforcement proceedings and orders to ensure that property owners and developers fully understand how and when code enforcement occurs.
146 or 150 in the booklet.
555 for the packet.
So this chapter also clearly identifies the planner's authority to interpret and enforce the code with commission oversight. Right now, the city's code enforcement provisions are, they're interesting. Yep, it's the Wild West. So we've tried to make this straightforward, easy to interpret, and procedurally much more clear. You know, like with our permitting chapter, you know, if you've got questions about the planning commission's role in code enforcement, we've got a section that talks about that. If you've got a question about civil remedies, we've got a section about that. If you have a question about abatement of a nuisance, which has been a hot button topic with code compliance, we've got a specific section about that. We also have sections which specifically address violations and fines for violations so that you know if you've committed a land use violation, exactly what to expect. You don't have to guess. Under current Title 16, one of the things which is unclear is who has authority to address land use violations, and then what happens when you violate the terms of a land use permit. So the enforcement section of the proposed city code specifically identifies and outlines the authority of the council, the commission, and the planner to govern land use. It gives these entities already have that authority, but the code clarifies that these are in fact the entities which govern land use. And then within that framework, proposed Wasilla Municipal Code 16-125-035 specifically identifies the remedies that are available to the city when a violation occurs. Right now, these are kind of scattered in all different places, but this proposed city code clarifies that the city, when faced with violation of a land use permit, can order that land use be discontinued. It can abate or remove a structure or part of a structure which is in violation of the title. It can order a discontinuation of construction. It can issue a stop work order. It can require the activity which is intended to prepare for a violation of a land use permit be stopped in its tracks. It can also order the suspension or revocation of a land use permit where there's been a violation of the permit. And it can also order that that properties which have been developed in violation of a permit be restored to their original condition. These are powerful remedies which are helpful to the city to ensure that everybody's safe, but they're not punitive because the Title 16, as we've drafted it, provides clear steps that property owners have to take in order to get a permit, requires that the permits be clear and definite in their terms, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and then says if you violate a permit, here's what can happen. It doesn't allow property owners the ability to just ignore a permit and do whatever they want with the property despite what the permit says.
Commissioner Brown, that piece of the regulation has been a concern of mine for many years and stuff, for several reasons. It was the planner or the enforcement officer trained to drive by or walk up to a structure, and do they have the knowledge and the training and education to say, yes, that is out of compliance or in compliance? And are we setting our enforcement officer up for failure by not making sure he has some kind of training in that area? And how do we train him, or how do we hire somebody with that qualification? Because telling me that my structure is not up to code, I don't know, maybe the enforcement officer do have that training, but does he?
Yeah, I think there's and Player Wellman, certainly feel free to interrupt me if you think it's appropriate. I think there's a few key points to that question. One of those is that the city doesn't regulate building. I mean, building codes are incredibly complex, but we're not asking our code compliance officers to go out and look at electrical systems or
Engineer or whatever.
Yeah, we're not asking them to do an engineering review or a home inspection of a property. What we're looking for are things like, if a property is built within a setback, that's something which is a little bit more clear-cut and might not require as much specialized training. Another aspect is, if there is a determination that a violation has occurred and that determination is wrong, what process is available? So if a violation's issued, if there's a citation that's issued, that's appealable to court. So it'd be in district court. So a property owner would be able to go in and say, here's what city code says. Here's what the development situation is at my property. Here's why the citation's wrong. And then the property owner would not be penalized for that violation. So there is that process built in. And then a third aspect, I think, is the training or experience of the individual code compliance officers and other city personnel. And I think that might be something that the city planner would be better suited to address.
Yes, so we're very fortunate in that Charlie does have an eye for many things, but it's not 100% his purview. So many times what happens is something comes to the attention of him. For example, maybe there's somebody who turns in a complaint to our citizen serve, or maybe there is a like a wavy guy, one of the little signs that's in the easement. So he sees something like that, and then when he pulls up on CitizenServe to see if there's any permits, no, there's no permits, but also no, there's no business license, so he's able to see some of these things. And he'll be able to see even more once we get everything that is currently in the big line of filing cabinets. So we're kind of in the digital world and mostly in the physical world. He'll be able to see some of those things. With all that said, though, you're absolutely right. I think it would benefit to have somebody with, good knowledge, and I think he does have that right now, but I think any additional would be great as well.
Yeah.
One example would be he sees that there's, there's all duplexes in the area, and then in a specific neighborhood, and then he sees that there's a house that has 3. And he thinks, well, this isn't a multifamily. This is if you had the training. This isn't a multifamily zone. I wonder what's going on here. And then he's able to go ahead and pull up in, we have our zoning charts online, and he can see, nope, this is not allowed. And then maybe he touches base with the planner before making any determination.
I just know, Commissioner Brown, I just know from previous that there are some builders, and especially when people are building their own property, they take shortcuts sometimes.
Not if they want a good resale, they don't.
All right, thank you.
That's excellent, thank you.
Another change that we've made is updating the city's public nuisance requirements. Right now, city code identifies public nuisances in very specific ways, which are not necessarily consistent with the way the law's developed. This isn't to say that they're unlawful, just that the law now recognizes and treats public nuisances more expansively. So proposed Wasilla Municipal Code section 16-125-040 specifies that uses, activities, conditions, properties, or structures which are in violation of code enforcement orders which continue after the time for appeal from that enforcement order has passed, or all appeals are exhausted, as public nuisances. So if code enforcement sees what they perceive to be a land use violation, they issue an enforcement order or a citation, and then the property owner either doesn't challenge that or is unsuccessful in any process that they choose to take advantage of. That's a public nuisance. Before action is taken by the city to abate that nuisance, a final warning notice must be posted on the site and served on the violator and owner of record. And then, if necessary, the mayor through the planner may order the destruction or removal of the nuisance. This isn't to say that the city is going to be shelling out huge amounts of money to abate public nuisances of its own volition. Instead, the violator, the person that's allowed the nuisance to persist, is liable for the entire cost of the abatement of the nuisance. If it's not paid, a notice of lien may be placed on the property. So that way, if it's sold or foreclosed upon, the city has to be made whole for the cost of abating the nuisance. So this differs a little bit from the way that Title 16 is currently drafted, in that right now public nuisances are defined very specifically. If you've got X many junk vehicles, if you've got garbage which is visible from a city street, these are all things which are terrible and unsightly, but they don't really get to the heart of what our city's land use code is about, which is making sure that that permits are being complied with and that city code is being followed. So we've reframed public nuisances in that way. Remedies. So if there is a land use violation, what happens? So right now, there is a remedies provision in city code, but it's not necessarily complete. So proposed Wasilla Municipal Code 16-125-045 authorizes the city to do a few things. It authorizes the city to bring a lawsuit or a civil action for violations of Title 16, to enjoin or put a halt to the violation, to require the restoration of structures, vegetation, land, or bodies of water, to recover damages suffered because of the violation, and to recover penalties payable to the city not exceeding $1,000 for each violation. These are all remedies that the city is entitled to under state law, under Title 29, but that aren't necessarily currently reflected in city code. So we've updated city code to mirror those provisions of state law which already apply. The city code also allows persons aggrieved by a violation, so adjoining property owners, to bring those civil actions themselves against violators. It automatically presumes that a person within 300 feet of a violation is a person aggrieved. So if you own property which is immediately next to a property which on which there's a land use violation, you can bring a lawsuit if you feel it's appropriate at your own cost to ensure that that violation is addressed. And that incorporates some frustration that we've heard during commission meetings from neighboring property owners who feel like there's a land use violation on their neighbor's property that isn't sufficiently addressed. They might feel powerless under the current provisions of city code, but this gives them something that they can affirmatively do on their own to address the violation. And you may be wondering, what is a violation? Like, that's a nice word, what does it mean? Well, here's what it means. These are all land use violations. If a structure conflicts with a provision of land development code, that's a violation. If a structure is used or occupied in a way which is not consistent with the development code or a permit issued under the development code, that's a violation. If a structure is constructed, reconstructed, enlarged, moved, repaired, or altered other than as allowed by the development code, that's a violation. None of this is necessarily too outside the box, but sometimes what we see are property owners who might try to get creative with their legal arguments. And so this tries to foreclose and make very clear what precisely a violation is, what conduct is inconsistent with city code and can expose you to legal penalties. We've also cleaned up city code to clarify who is a violator. Sometimes it might be very clear that a property is being used in a way which is not consistent with the land development code, but the real question might be who's on the hook for it. I don't own this property, so-and-so owns this property. Who's liable for the violation? What we've proposed is that a violator is a person who commits or causes a violation of this title. They're the responsible party. A violator is a person who occupies, maintains, keeps, alters, constructs, or establishes a structure or use of land or a structure in violation of the development code, a regulation or a permit, or the property owner. So this way, the city is not constrained simply to issue citations or violations to property owners, but instead can seek relief from the person who actually caused a violation. And this is helpful because sometimes property can be occupied or controlled by somebody who's not reflected in title to the property. Sometimes, for example, when a parent passes, there might not be a formal probate proceeding or a formal transfer of the property. And so, adult child, say, who occupies the property might feel like they can do whatever they want for it, whatever they want with it risk-free. And this just clarifies that no, if you cause a violation of the city's land use code, you're going to be on the hook for it.
Commissioner Brown again. So I have a builder building my house, and he's following my direction, is in violation, you recommend the violation to me or to the builder?
You know,
I'm laughing because we actually had this exact conversation. Do you remember? It's been a little while, but anyway.
oh, I do remember that, yeah. So, the way city code is currently drafted, it would be the owner only who would be responsible for the violation. This provision, you know, if it is the builder who causes a violation of the city's land use code, then they could be subject to citation also. Ultimately, it's pretty fact specific, you know, under this proposal, who would ultimately be on the receiving end. The way this is drafted, all of those people could be considered a violator under city code. So it would be up to the specific facts and circumstances to identify who the proper person or persons to get the violation would be.
I feel, I may have told him to do it, but as a licensed builder, he's supposed to know the regs and supposed to know what the laws are.
Yeah.
And should have refused to do that, so it's his responsibility.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would feel the same way.
Commissioner Seals, a lot of this all depends on due diligence of all the parties. So if all the parties are doing their due diligence, there should not be a problem. As long as everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. It's just like the 30 days on the permitting process. If the permittee has all their ducks in a row, it should be easy for the planning department to fly through it. But there again, it's like when we're sitting here in our quasi-judicial hat, we're depending on due diligence of all the parties in order to make, so that would be my point here.
Yeah, if the process is working appropriately, there shouldn't be any surprises.
Yes.
Good luck with that.
Humans are involved.
So a few changes that we discussed with council that I was hoping to get the commission's feedback on are filing fees and fines, the city's notification of neighboring property owners. Right now, the current provision is 1,200 feet, which is about, it's a little bit more than a quarter of a mile. It's also substantially larger than many other communities. Generally, the notification provision is 300 and 500 feet. So the city might want to consider the pros and cons of requiring such a large notification area. And then another final thing, which we've discussed a little bit already, are the different deadlines for hearing and permitting processes. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer for those deadlines. There's no specific criteria that's imposed by due process or by state law. Do any members of the commission have any thoughts on any of these topics?
Commissioner Brown, the 1,200 feet, wasn't that originally a good number because out here compared to Anchorage, the lots are bigger and homes are much further spread apart. Whereas in Anchorage, 500 feet covers 20 homes.
Yeah.
Where out here, that's 2 homes. And so that's, I think with our density right now, the property lots are bigger and so we're much spread apart. I would hate to cut that back a whole lot from 1,200, maybe less than 1,200, but not down to 500.
Chair Seals, I follow Commissioner Brown's approach on this. We haven't reached density in a lot of areas. We have a lot of undeveloped areas. So I think the 1,200 is a really good number for now. And like I said, this can be addressed in the future when there is more density. But 1,200 feet seems to be, in our current form, seems to be a good fit.
Sure.
Because there is such a diversity of lot sizes within the city, You have some subdivisions with 0.97 acres, half acre. Now I understand that they're even considering quarter acres. So that even that 1,200 feet is going to be not enough. So is there any way to put the wording in here that gives the city leeway to look at the area that they're working with and saying, here we need 1,200, here we need 2,000, without defining it so closely?
One of the things that we want to ensure is that similarly situated property owners feel like they're treated equally during various permitting processes. One thing that some communities do is they'll impose different notification requirements for different zoning districts. I don't know that that's something that we've specifically discussed with council or with the commission before, but that's something that we could explore. I think that the intent with the 1,200 feet was to strike the kind of balance that Commissioners Brown and Seals have mentioned, Wasilla typically being a more, compared to other communities, more rural community with larger lot sizes. But we could explore whether it would make sense to require different geographic requirements for different zoning districts. That would complicate a little bit the provisions of this chapter and make it a little bit more unwieldy. I'm thinking of Anchorage's municipal code, which imposes different procedural requirements for a variety of different zoning districts, and developers find that challenging to work with.
Chair Sales, we're in the process of simplifying and clarifying Title 16. So anything that adds more distraction, like having the different levels of zoning areas versus 500 feet or 1,200 feet, I think a simple one line, one number is going to work best.
I agree with that. I mean, 1,200 is good. And we're just getting more and more dense. We're not getting wider. We don't have as much land as we used to have, so it's not gonna get bigger. I mean, you already see the growth. It's crazy.
Yes.
So I think 12 is a good number.
Then I would agree, no less than 1,200 though.
For now. I mean, it's a 10-year plan, so it might go lower eventually, because we are going to have bigger lots. It's, and
Smaller lots.
well, smaller. Well, they are they went from 5 acres to 1 acre to, but the borough acre's always been 0.97. I mean, that's just what it is. But they're going smaller, and sadly, people are thinking, well, I don't want to move out here to live in a neighborhood. Well, that's what's happening. But at least you're not, with that little 10-foot between houses, in $1 million neighborhood, like it is in Anchorage, it's horrible. So I hope that never happens here. But it could.
And certainly, if the lot size, if it does become the case that shoebox lots are the norm, then maybe the notice requirement could be revisited. But the feedback I'm hearing right now is that no less than 1,200 feet.
Yeah, and I like that because we're including more of the public in what's happening. For better or for worse, it could make it worse to have a whole neighborhood in here upset about something. But I think one of the purposes here is to keep the public involved, and so the 1,200 feet just gives that many more people an opportunity to speak their opinions.
Sure.
Let's make it 24.
No.
Shoebox lots show up, there'll be 2,400 people.
Oh, I know. Oh, God. We already have one of those right in Palmer.
So just a few more questions. I'm not necessarily asking for answers for these, but as the process continues, I just want to make sure that everybody understands the permitting procedures that we've proposed, where to find them in code, and whether the organization makes sense. Whether the commission understands what happens when there's a violation, who's responsible. and then the criteria for conditional use permits and compliance requirements, whether those make sense, and whether they'll make sense to the public. And another thing that I want to reiterate is, we want this new Title 16 to be accessible. So if there's any materials that, we in collaboration with administration need to put together to help make that happen, we want to do that. If there's a handout that you're envisioning in your mind, we're pretty good at making handouts. And we'd love to be able to do that.
So that is one of the biggest things that we have here, and it's something that we talk about constantly, because right now, we don't have that, here's a paper, welcome to the city, here's a list of things that you need to do. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what you need to do, but it's something that we're actively, and it's really exciting to have, the future to look forward to. So, thank you.
I think this kind of plays a little bit into the discussion that we were having earlier about the pre-application process.
Yes.
I mean, we want everybody, regardless of their land use issue, to feel like they've got that level of service. I mean, that's not going to be practicable without imposing an enormous burden on administration and on city staff. But, I think a good handout could go a long way to making the public feel well served.
On the website especially, because different people get their information from different avenues, and having all of that, and we've been a little hesitant to put a bunch of things up. We've put a lot up, but as we're developing the process, we're excited.
I wanted to thank Zoe and your firm. You guys have done an excellent job on this rewrite, and good luck in your new endeavors.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
Enjoy
you.
it.
Yeah, this has been this project has really been a pleasure to work on. It's complex but rewarding.
I don't believe that.
I do have a question, I guess, for the planner or is there currently, so we have the code, right? Is there currently like a cheat sheet? If someone came in and said, I want to build a fence, what do I need to know?
No, and that's the problem. That
So-
is the 100% problem. And we had to decide where we were going to focus our time on, and as we could, we'd, for example, on our conditional use permits, I put together a timeline for the developers, for the applicant, so they knew exactly what to expect when things were going out. And so, no, we have not achieved that yet, and it's something we want so bad.
Yeah, and it'd be a big task, I think, as part of this rewrite,
Yes.
right? That is something that should, the most commonly asked questions, if I want to put in a fourplex, what do I need to do? And just da-da-da-da-da. And then that could make it better, so when they bring their materials to you, they've got their ducks in a row, because they've had kind of this informal cheat sheet.
There's a few things on the website right now. There's, just like some frequently asked questions, but not a lot.
Okay.
There's some existing things. I have not made many changes in that regards, nor have I made changes to CitizenServe either. And CitizenServe is a very robust system, and that can get you into some trouble sometimes, because as you're filling out an application, well, why are they asking if I have a landscape bond? So they tried to work with it as they could by putting a little red dot if it was actually required, but then in the next field, anyway, lots of things
Yeah.
that we're gonna be able to simplify as we're throwing out the wheat and the chaff, we're finding the good stuff.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, it'll take time, but I think we'll get there.
Commissioner Brown, I have had a concern with the rewrite. I'm all for the city giving help to the single self-builder. But to have a website up, to have additional pages up, to have instruction up, require maintenance.
Yes.
You can't do that and forget about it.
No.
And we seem to spend a lot of conversation about duplexes and commercial property. Every one of those is gonna have an architect. Every one of those is gonna have a group of professionals working for them. And if a group of professionals can't go to this book and read it, then I got questions about their
Skills.
Yeah. And so we're doing this and we're saying make it easier for them, but that's not a one-time thing. She's got to constantly go back and revisit that and make sure of any changes, make sure the form is up to date, make sure the website's working, pay somebody to run the website, or have a city employee run it, but usually contracted out, I believe. And so that's an ongoing, so how much money do we want to spend of citizens' tax money to make it easier for a professional architect to build a fourplex?
Well, I don't think that the citizens, a lot of them are gonna mind paying somebody to maintain a website. I mean, their tax dollars, like, I wouldn't. It's very helpful. Sometimes I don't wanna sit and read a book. I
We're
wanna go
still
to
on
my-
Windows 7.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the
But my question is really quick, you were talking about fences and stuff and like, getting the help or coming in and saying, what do I need to do to build a fence? Do you direct them to their HOA just in case their fence doesn't comply with what the HOA, that could be a disaster too. Like, oh, well, the city said I could do this, well, you can't, and we've got Anchorage builders coming out here and imposing all these rules in these new subdivisions, and it's like, oh, Lord, here we go,
Yes, that's one of the things we say as well as a surveyor. We
Yes.
say that that's the number one thing because that they will really be your friend.
Yeah, you need a surveyor, absolutely.
So one of the exciting things about the new software is it has the technology with if-then. So and we have not programmed this, obviously, we're like on day 2, basically, but where they're saying, hello, hi, we're Tyler. But one of the things that, as we watched some of the demonstrations was, and in fact, you can go, I believe I know the borough's using the exact Tyler system, which is going to be so beneficial for the integration side of things. But anyway, you open up the website and it says, what do you want to do today? And you say, I want to build a house. So that it takes you to that first level. And then, okay, what do you want a duplex? Yes, I want a duplex. So it takes you along the path. And so along with the actual paper documents that we'll have, and maybe, somebody doesn't want to go through the whole, just take me to the end, I just want to know what the answers are. I think there's going to be a lot choices.
In my other hat, I understand what you're saying, but other cities are finding out that Tyler is being hacked.
Yeah, that's
Things are being
scary.
changed.
Interesting. I will actually take that
And I
to
don't mean
our.
Tyler, I don't know about Tyler, but those programs are being hacked and things are changing. That's why I said it's gotta be maintenance. Gotta be somebody who goes
Absolutely.
in every so often and makes sure this is still working the way I meant for it to work. So it's not a push the button and walk away forever.
Oh, no.
Absolutely.
And so, yes, and I do object to my tax dollars going to that.
Well, I don't. No. I mean, it's way easier to change a line in a computer than it is to print a whole new book with the new rules. So, and then in adding amendments, you might not see them, you might not have them. But then you also have the problem if you don't update something, for a month, then, you might have someone building something that is past. It's you always have to maintain things. You have to, if you want rules.
Well, let's just forbid it more building in Wasilla. Nobody's gonna move this.
I'm sure the borough would love that. No.
Fence.
Yeah. You can't have one.
Let's get out of control, David.
I know. I was reaching for the hammer. Okay, is there any more discussion at this point?
Commissioner Stafford, I move we exit committee of the whole.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Commissioner Brown, second.
Is there any discussion? Any objections? With no objections, the motion passes unanimously to exit the committee of whole. It is 7:58 p.m.
We made it, 8 o'clock.
So we are now at communications. Are there any comments on the communications items as presented? We had talked, the district, city administrator had talked about number of permits and license issues. I'm sure there are code violations. There's humans involved. Does anybody want to go over any of that? We move on to audience comments. Since we have no audience, we're gonna skip past that too. So Planner Wellman, do you have any comments?
I'll look to Zoe first and just say thank you so much. I really
you're
appreciate your expertise, and I learned something, not just about the code, but just so many of the things that you've said that I've taken with me. So thank you. It's made quite an impression on me. And I wish you success, and I hope we see you around if you're in the area. I look forward to that. And otherwise, I'm looking forward to tomorrow night and what that will bring. I think we're really coming cohesively together with everybody bringing a little bit different something to the table, and I'm excited on where we're going to go with this. Thank you.
City Attorney Zoe Eisenberg, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for a terrific meeting tonight. This was definitely one of the livelier planning commission meetings that I've been to, and everybody had great feedback on the proposed Title 16 that we've brought to you. And I've really enjoyed working on this project despite Commissioner Brown's skepticism. And I really hope that that we've been able to provide a product that's useful and that'll be able to integrate well with the comprehensive plan process. So thank you, everybody.
Commissioner Brown, do you have any additional comments tonight?
Just to everybody, glad you was here, and thanks for the lively discussions, and to the attorney, thanks again for your service to this, to the city and to the commission. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Landigo, do you have any comments?
Just an excellent meeting tonight. I truly appreciated the Deputy Administrator. I'm never sure of her title. She seems to bounce. Her report and the work done by the attorneys, and I just hope that we continue to get input from the various departments on projects that's ongoing. I'm very curious what's going on with 2024 CIP. What is the status? Were they completed? Where are we at? Are we looking at changes? So I would like to see more input on those type of items within the city to the Planning Commission. But other than that, great meeting tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner DeYoung, do you have any comments this evening?
I'm just happy that I was here and I enjoyed the meeting. And you're awesome. I'm sorry you're leaving. I didn't get to really work with you, and I'm kind of sad. But anyway,
Yeah,
thanks.
it's good to meet you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stafford, do you have any comments?
Just kind of echoing the others. Zoe, thank you for all the work you put into you and your firm. This has been a big project, and it feels like we're making progress on it. And I think great things are ahead for the city of Wasilla.
Thank you. Chair Seals, thank you, Zoe. It's been a pleasure working with you on this project. Some of these changes that we've been going through, I've been involved in since I got on the commission, and we still haven't come to a finalization point yet. But I do see bright light in the future, so I wish you also to have a bright future, and have a great evening, everybody. Thanks for your comments. With no further business at hand, I'm adjourning the meeting unless an objection is raised.
Oh, he's gonna.
He's got to wait a little bit. He's sometimes right at the last second. Hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned at 8:04 p.m.